I never planned to work nights. Not the kind where the air tastes like dust and bug spray, and the only thing moving after midnight is the highway fog. But when the Crosswind Motel's night clerk wanted ad showed up stapled to the bulletin board at the truck stop diner, the pay sounded decent and the hours meant I could dodge rent another month. The hiring process took 5 minutes. The manager, Miss Hallow, was an older woman with hair the color of cigarette ash, clipped short like it offended her. She asked no questions except if I could keep quiet, follow instructions, and not go exploring. I said, sure. She nodded once and handed me a metal key ring that clanged like it had history. That was 3 nights ago. Tonight, the job finally feels routine enough that I'm starting to notice the smell. The weird blend of damp carpet cleaner, motor oil, and windblown cedar that seeps through the vent no matter how many times I spray deodorizer. The Crosswind Motel sits a few hundred feet off Highway 16, crouched behind a row of dying pines. 12 rooms, all single level, each door painted the same dull red. At night, headlights sweep the parking lot in long white arcs, then vanish, leaving silence thick as cotton in your ears. My shift runs from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. That means I'm on duty while the rest of the world sleeps through the hours when things refuse to behave normally. The first thing Carl told me, Carl being the evening clerk I'm replacing, was, "Don't expect company, expect weird." He was half joking, I think. Carl looked exhausted even before he finished counting the register-heavy shadows under his eyes and nicotine stains running like veins on his fingers. He moved slow, deliberate, a man whose body had already accepted insomnia as a religion. "Everything's simple here," he muttered, showing me the basics. "Log license plates. Take cash only, no credit after midnight. Don't lose the ledger." The motel still uses actual paper ledgers, a thick book bound in cracked leather, older than me. All guests sign in by hand, room numbers written beside curling signatures. There's dust ground into the pages like ash carried by every person who's ever stayed here. Carl flipped to tonight's entries. Couple in room 3, trucker in 7. Some guy checked into 11 an hour back, and then he tapped the next line with the butt of his pen. Room 9, it's always occupied. I looked closer. The line wasn't blank exactly, just a faint impression, like words had once been written there and later erased. "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked. He shrugged. "Means leave it be. You'll understand after a few shifts." That was when he handed me the after midnight rule sheet, a single page yellowed with thumbprints, taped to the wall behind the counter. Most of the writing was faded, but I made out a few lines scratched in block letters. "Keep all room keys on the hook after midnight. Do not pick up the lobby phone more than once per hour. Windows stay closed from 2 to 3 a.m. Guests in room 9 are not to be disturbed ever." I laughed. "What is this? A prank?" Carl didn't. He tucked his lighter into his shirt pocket and said, "Just rules, kid, the kind you appreciate after you break one." Then he left through the side door with the energy of a man escaping a burning house. The lobby went quiet except for the low hum of the vending machine. The first 2 hours dragged by in peaceful monotony, just me, the clock, and the subtle pop of bugs frying against the porch light. A tired semi rolled into the lot around 12:40. The driver, middle-aged, checked in for a few hours of rest, paid in cash, and shuffled off to room 5. Exactly the sort of transaction you expect on a backroad midnight shift. With nothing to do, I roamed behind the counter, getting familiar with the equipment. The security monitor showed a 4-way split of grainy camera feeds the parking lot, lobby, hallway, and a blank channel labeled Room 9. The feed wasn't broken, it was just black, completely. To test it, I toggled channels, all fine except 9. No static, no flicker, just absence, like that part of the motel didn't exist on film. My hand hovered over the radio intercom, the one used to call rooms for wake-ups or service, but something told me not to press anything. Some instinct said this motel had a way of punishing curiosity. Instead, I made coffee. The old percolator wheezed like a sick animal. The air smelled burnt and metallic. I poured a cup and tried not to think about how the liquid shimmered darker than coffee ought to. At 1:15 a.m., the lights dimmed for half a second. Not unusual lightning flickers often reached us from far storms, but tonight the sky was clean. Just stars and that hard desert moon. A moment later, a gust of wind slipped through the gap under the lobby door, cool and smelling faintly of salt. That's strange, because the nearest coastline is hours away. The gust rustled the ledger's pages. I closed it, and the movement stopped. Then came the shuffle of footsteps on gravel. I looked up to see a figure outside, standing under the flickering porch bulb. From the window, I could only make out a shape. Tall, musty coat, hat brim low enough to hide the face. But there was something about how still they stood, facing the door, unmoving, even when the light blinked twice and went dark again. I waited for a knock. None. Maybe a traveler too shy or too tired to come in. I unlocked the door and opened it halfway. Need a room? The figure tilted its head slightly, the way dogs do when they're guessing intent. Then it stepped forward, slow and deliberate. Its boots didn't crunch on the gravel, didn't make a sound at all. Cash only, I said again, out of reflex, masking the sudden chill sneaking up my arms. The stranger reached into a pocket and produced 3 bills, folded tight and slightly wet as if kept under water. I took them carefully. They were 20s, all identical serial numbers. Weird printing, I muttered. You'll want room 8, non-smoking. I grabbed the key off the hook labeled 8 and held it out. The figure's sleeve brushed my fingers, ice-cold fabric, stiff like freezer burn. They turned without another word and walked down the lot toward the red doors. That was that. Usual enough for a night job until I checked the ledger again to record the payment. The ink on the previous pages had smudged, bleeding across dates I hadn't touched. On the line for room 8, where I should have written the guest's name, there was already faint handwriting in someone else's scrawl. Paid in silence. My gut twisted. I flipped back a few pages and noticed other instances, same words, same handwriting, small and gray like charcoal. Maybe Carl's idea of humor. I glanced at the currency again, still resting on the counter. The bills were bone dry now, except not even bills anymore. The paper had turned brittle, cream-colored, with faded motel brochures printed on them. A cheerful drawing of Crosswind Motel, circa 1980, slogan reading, "Where the highway meets the sea breeze." I swear the brochure in the illustration showed 13 rooms instead of 12. Before I could process it, the security monitor for Channel 9 blinked once. The black screen brightened into snowy static. Then a shadow moved through tall, coat-shaped, walking toward a door that shouldn't exist. When the image froze, it left behind a pale silhouette white on black, like the ghost of a man pressed into film negative. I leaned closer. There, in the top right corner, just visible above the timestamp, were words burned into the static. Shift begins at midnight for everyone. I stepped back. The sentence pulsed once, then disappeared. A cold drift of air brushed my neck. Somewhere down the hall, a door clicked open, slow, deliberate. And for the first time since taking this job, I realized the Crosswind Motel had been waiting for me. When I went to check which door had opened, every number plate from 1 to 12 was blank. Only room 9 still had its number glowing faintly red under the flickering light. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out from behind the counter. The silence was so thick, I could hear my heartbeat echo off the lobby walls. Every number plate on the doors outside had gone blank, wiped smooth as fresh paint except room 9, where the metal numbers burned faintly red in the dark, like embers under glass. It was cold enough that my breath fogged the air, though it had been a warm September night moments ago. I swept the beam across the row of doors. No movement, no breeze, nothing. Just that feeling of somebody watching from an angle you couldn't locate. Then, click. The sound came again, not a door opening, but the front bell at the counter ringing by itself. Back in the lobby, the cash drawer was open. The brittle old brochures, the ones that had replaced the money the silent guest gave me, were gone. 3 fresh $20 bills lay in their place, crisp and new, with serial numbers close but not identical. The air smelled faintly of wet cedar again. My stomach clenched. Miss Hallow wouldn't, I muttered, trying to find a logical explanation. A trick, a hidden drawer mechanism, maybe even a prank by Carl. But the monitors were clear, except for the familiar black square labeled Channel 9. I sat down, fingers trembling, and wrote in the ledger, 1:23 a.m. guest returned payment, room 8. As soon as the pen lifted, a faint scratching came from under the counter, paper against wood. I knelt and opened the cabinet, expecting mice. Instead, the missing brochures were there, folded neatly into a stack, each one stamped with tonight's date in wet ink. The motel's slogan had changed. It now read, "Where the highway meets the dead air." I stared for a long minute. The hum of the ceiling fan filled my skull with nervous static. Then the radio intercom crackled alive. The motel's system had been silent all night, but now a slow, static rhythm breathed through it, like someone exhaling right into the mic. Faint words followed, fragmented but human. "Front desk, please." I froze. Nobody should be calling at that hour, and certainly not from inside. I could see every door from the window, all shut. "Hello," I whispered, leaning toward the mic. Silence. Then the whisper came again, softer, closer. "Room 9's key." My gaze darted to the wall of hooks. Every key was in its spot except room 9S. I hadn't removed it. Carl must have taken it home, or the guest in room 9, whoever they were, still had it. Hearing someone ask for it through the intercom made my throat go dry. I didn't respond. I reached under the monitor shelf and flipped the speaker switch off, killing the static. The sudden quiet was worse than noise. Around 2 a.m., the wind picked up outside. Even before the glass rattled, the motel seemed to groan in its foundations, an unnatural tension through my shoes. I remembered Rule #3 from the sheet. Windows stay closed between 2 and 3 a.m. I checked the lobby window. It was halfway open, probably from earlier. I shoved it shut, but something resisted, like pushing against water, not air. A chill seeped through the gap, carrying a smell like burning ozone and rust. For an instant, I thought I saw a pale hand pressed against the reflection in the glass. There was no one outside. It was from inside the reflection. Fingers splayed exactly where mine were. I yanked the window down. It slammed. The reflection lingered a fraction too long before matching my movement again. At 2:37 a.m., the phone rang once. Sharp, high-pitched, real, physical. Rule #2. Do not pick up the lobby phone more than once per hour. I hadn't answered any calls yet, so technically I was allowed. I lifted the receiver. Crosswind Motel, front desk. Nothing but wet static. Then soft wailing like a baby in dreams before it cries. The line popped twice and cut dead. The clock above the coffee pot showed 2:39 a.m. The hands didn't move after that. By 3 o'clock, the highway fog had rolled in thick enough to erase the parking lot. I wanted to go outside, just to feel real air, but the rule sheet seemed burned into my brain. Keep all room keys on the hook. I checked again, room 9's hook still empty. On impulse, I aimed the security camera joystick to recheck each feed. Nothing unusual until channel 3. The hallway flickered. A figure walked toward the lobby. Coat, hat, same silent gait as before. Room 8? I whispered. Maybe they needed towels or a receipt or something human. But when the figure reached the lobby door, it didn't open. It simply stopped, just like before, and faced the glass. Under the porch light, I could see its outline clearer. Tall, angular, soaked as if drenched in invisible rain. Then its face tilted toward the camera, not toward me, right into the lens above the door. The monitor exploded into snow. The next frame showed the door slightly ajar, though I hadn't heard it open. I spun around. The actual door behind me moved slowly back into place, whispering against the carpet. Whoever or whatever was there was gone. In its place, sitting perfectly on the lobby floor, was the room 9 key. Old brass, worn down by decades of use. Water dripped from it, shaping a small circle on the tile that steamed as if hot. I picked it up. The metal pulsed, or maybe it was just my nerves. A vibration ran through my palm like a faraway engine idling under my skin. I stuffed it into my pocket, half expecting Miss Hallow to burst in. Instead, the intercom I'd shut off earlier turned itself back on. Through the static, the same voice whispered again, closer, clearer now, unmistakably my own voice mirrored backward. "Do not let them check out." The phrase looped once before cutting off. Then I heard it, a knock from inside the wall, 3 slow taps. I checked the ledger. The line for room 8, where the guest had signed earlier, was gone. The page was blank again, except for one new word at the bottom: returned. Outside, headlights swept across the fog, and the low grumble of a truck engine passed. Ordinary life a few hundred feet away, yet standing there holding that wet key, it felt like the rest of the world had quietly folded itself out of Crosswind's reach. I slipped the key ring back onto its peg. It clicked against the others with a hollow sound that echoed far longer than it should have. The clock began to move again at 3:14 a.m., ticking backward. When I turned to the window, the reflection waiting for me wasn't mine. It smiled, lifted my own brass key, and whispered through the glass, "Push it open at 2 o'clock tomorrow." I didn't sleep after that shift. I spent the daylight hours pretending to rest in my small apartment above the laundromat. But every time the air conditioner clicked on, I thought I heard that whisper from the intercom, looping, "Do not let them check out." By sunset, I convinced myself it had been exhaustion, the mind twisting shadows and silence into something worse. The Crosswind Motel was old. It had bad wiring, older plumbing, rusted vents that moaned with air pressure. Logical, human. Still, logic didn't explain why my reflection smiled when I didn't. At 10:30 p.m., I clocked in for my next shift. Miss Hallow wasn't there to greet me. She had left an envelope with my pay stub and a note. "Follow the rules strictly. Windows matter most. Be courteous to the guests." Underneath her handwriting was a fresh rules sheet, cleaner and whiter than before. The last one had been yellowed and wrinkled. This one looked freshly printed. But rule #3 wasn't the same anymore. Do not open the lobby window for any reason. If it knocks, turn off the lights. The first few hours were the same as always. Emptiness, the recurring hum of semis on the highway, bugs orbiting the porch light, the faint sugary smell of vending machine pastries leaking through the vents. I kept checking the wall of keys, staring at room 9. It sat where I'd hung it last night, bone dry and ordinary, but the tag had warped slightly, as if the brass had softened under heat and re-hardened crooked. By 1:55 a.m., I caught myself staring at the lobby's front window again. The outside was black, mirror perfect, reflecting the counter, the clock, the exact slouch of my shoulders. Only one difference: the reflected me was breathing slower, almost deliberately lagging. When the clock's minute hand reached 2 o'clock, the air pressure shifted, a deep, gentle suction, like standing near a moving train. The smell of salt and rust thickened until it burned my nostrils. I stepped back, instinct screaming that I'd already done something wrong. Then came the tapping. At first, delicate fingertip light on the window pane, then a steady rhythm. Knock, knock, knock. I remembered the updated rule. If it knocks, turn off the lights. My hand flew to the switch. Darkness swallowed the lobby instantly, leaving only the faint red emergency exit sign to paint the walls in a dim glow. The reflection on the window didn't vanish. It brightened. The mirrored version of me stood in perfect posture, eyes wide open. Beside it, something else began to emerge. Imagine heat rippling off a summer road. Now make that ripple inside the glass. A human shape pressed forward from the reflection, skin like glimmering silver distortion. No face, no features, only a mouth-shaped gap stretching wide as it leaned toward me. I stepped backward, whispering under my breath, "No, no, no, no." The reflection raised an arm, or what looked like one, and handed something through the glass, a tiny paper slip sliding out, as if it passed through water. It hit the window ledge and stopped. For a full minute, the shape lingered only inches away, shuddering like film caught in a projector. I didn't dare switch the lights back on. Eventually, the air relaxed. The mirror darkened. The shape withdrew. I waited until the clock said 2:11 a.m. before turning the switch. The lights flickered twice and steadied. The paper slip remained. I used a pencil to drag it toward me without touching it directly. It looked like a receipt torn from the motel ledger. Same handmade style with grid lines and shaded boxes. On it, written in fountain pen ink, "This window belongs to us between hours 2-3. Do not look through more than twice." Below, the signature blurred. Almost written from the inside of the paper, outward was my own name. Something moved on the hallway camera feed. Room 4's door opened. The guest assigned there, a salesman named Gray, was supposed to have checked out that morning. I'd cleared his file. But on the screen, the door swung open, and a man stepped out, adjusting his tie, eyes white under black sockets. He walked toward the lobby. I shut off the monitor. That felt childish, useless, but watching it would have been worse. Seconds later, I heard heavy breathing near the vending machines. Then faint knocking again, this time from inside the wall next to the switchboard. The air felt thick, every sound stretching longer than physics should allow. "Eli," the voice came from everywhere and nowhere, my exact tone whispering behind my ear. I turned fast, my shoulder cracked, nothing. Then the phone rang. I didn't answer. The rules: do not pick up more than once per hour. It rang a second time, then stopped. The smell returned. Ocean rot blended with copper. At 2:47 a.m., Channel 9 flickered alive. A sliver of light showed a door opening into pure white fog. For the first time, Room 9's interior was visible. Figures moved behind gauze curtains, pacing backward and forward, rehearsing steps unheard by human ears. Then the screen froze. The pale figures turned toward the camera in unison. Static burst across the monitors. The lobby window clicked open by itself. A violent gust slammed through, scattering papers and throwing the rule sheet against my face. The air was freezing, carrying voices, layered whispers, like 1,000 versions of me mumbling out of time. I pushed the window shut with both hands, muscles shaking. It resisted, but finally sealed. The wind vanished instantly, one of those silence drops that makes your eardrums buzz. The receipt slip had vanished. In its place, a small puddle formed letters spelled backward. "See you tomorrow." I backed away until my knees hit the counter. The lights surged brighter, then gradually dimmed to normal. The clock struck 3. By 3:30 a.m., the world felt real again. The fog lifted outside, returning to cool darkness. The rule sheet fluttered gently on the wall, undamaged, except a new handwritten note at the bottom. "Good, you followed the rule this time." The phrase "this time" chilled me more than anything. It suggested I'd failed before. At 3:33 a.m., the phone rang again. When I picked it up, the whisper said, "You forgot to sign the ledger tonight." Then the line played my own voice, saying the same words, only slower, sadder. Morning finally came after the window incident, but I hardly noticed. I drove back to town half awake, the sun glaring hard enough to blur everything. Every shadow looked too deep, too still. I hadn't told anyone what I'd seen. Who would believe me? A reflection handed me a receipt through the glass. Isn't exactly a story you share over coffee. That day, I tried to convince myself to quit. When I called the motel's landline, the number rang once and cut off with a hiss, like the phone itself rejected my signal. An hour later, the call connected, playing a recording of my own voice saying softly, "You're already here." I hung up and stared at the screen. Somehow, knowing I had no choice was easier than pretending I did. At 10:50 p.m., I arrived again. The air outside was strangely electric, not hot, but charged. The neon Crosswind Motel sign buzzed louder than usual, letters stuttering in red and white pulses. Inside, the lobby looked cleaner than yesterday. The vending machine was restocked, the coffee pot replaced, but the landline phone, black and heavy, was missing its cord. The jack protruded empty from the wall. Beneath the phone base was another note. The lines echoed tonight, answered gently. Next to it, a fingerprint like smudge gray dust, fine as ash, left streaks across the counter as I brushed it aside. The first hour passed quietly, except for the hum of truck engines on the highway. I logged plate numbers, checked room, sipped coffee tasting of old pennies. Then the speakers in the ceiling popped, one sharp, one hollow. Power surge, I told myself. Flipping through the maintenance log didn't help. The pop echoed again, now with faint static noise, pulsing in rhythm, far too steady to be random. I traced it to the wall, behind the switchboard where the phone cord should have been. The void jack glowed faintly blue. Leaning closer, I realized the static wasn't just sound. It was whispering something under the fuzz. Hello, front desk? Reflexively, I grabbed the receiver, even without a cord. The static burst sharply. A female voice, thin and distant, said, I'd like to extend my stay. My throat caught. Which room? The line crackled. The voice changed, same tone, different words, slower, repeating, Room 9, but you're in it already, aren't you? Every monitor flickered. Channel 9 revealed a figure seated behind a counter just like mine, motionless, head tilted sideways. I placed the receiver down slowly, careful not to shake it. Seconds later, a knock came from the hallway, the thin wooden closet near the water heater. Carl had warned, stuff back there doesn't belong to us. The knocking grew frantic, then stopped. The phone stayed dead, but faint light from the unplugged jack spilled outward like smoke underwater. Peering closer, something moved inside shadows, crossing what should have been darkness. I heard words again. Help me find the receptionist who answers before clock-in. Miss Hallow's warning echoed in my mind. Never answer calls from before you clocked in. My watch read 11:37 p.m., past the start of my shift. If the call had come earlier, it wasn't meant for me. The static deepened. A third voice, layered in male, rasped, identical to Carl's gravel tone. You're answering too soon. The security feed jumped. Channel 3 blinked open the hallway. Every door glowed with tiny pale blue bars, moving like breathing. Channel 9 showed my desk, under darker lighting, as if the camera now watched me from the other side. I turned off every monitor, but faint reflections persisted, frames glowing weakly, casting ghostly images across the glass. Among them, I saw figures identical to me, each holding a phone receiver the same way. A darker realization settled. Every night shift might have been copied somewhere, or every clerk before me still worked here in their own lair. At 3 a.m., the air pressure dipped again. Lights flickered. The electric hush returned. The static sharpened into organized pulses like Morse code. I counted intervals, 6 short blips, 2 long, 1 long pause. I tried to translate CARL. As the final pulse faded, the receiver lifted itself off the cradle, hanging mid-air for a moment before dropping. Then it rang, one sharp tone, then another. Against my better judgment, I answered. The voice this time was Carl, calm, almost too calm. Close your ledger. I looked. Pages fluttered in still air, windows shut tight. Why? I asked. He sighed softly. Because they're writing you in. The line snapped to loud static. Overhead lights burned out. In the exit sign's glow, I saw what he meant. My name appeared in the ledger, handwriting identical to old ghosts. Eli Harmon, Room 9, paid in silence. I slammed the book shut, grabbed my flashlight. The hallway door opened itself. Rows of keys rattled. Then the hook for Room 9 swung loose and fell. The phone rang a third time this time, sounding like wind chewing through wires, deep below the earth. I didn't answer. At 3:33 a.m., the ringing stopped. Soft music seeped through the unplugged receiver, a faint, crackling waltz. Then Miss Hallow's voice joined it, whispering, "Deliver room service to the new hallway. The door will show you where." By the time Miss Hallow's voice faded from the phone, that slow whisper telling me to deliver room service to the new hallway, my heartbeat had wedged itself somewhere higher than my throat. The air inside the lobby felt thick, like breathing damp wool. Everything around me hummed faintly, as if electricity ran under the floorboards instead of wiring. For a minute, I thought about walking out. Just leave the keys, grab my car, go. But the thought dissolved before it even formed. Somehow, I knew there wouldn't be a highway waiting anymore, only fog and those dim red lights that passed for stars at Crosswind. The phrase "deliver room service" stuck in my head. It made no sense. We didn't have kitchen service. The motel only had a vending machine, a coffee pot, and whatever stale donuts truckers left behind. Still, my hands moved on their own. I opened the storage room door behind the counter, the one Carl used once to fetch cleaning supplies. The space beyond smelled worse than bleach, sour, metallic, almost like seawater left to rot. I flicked the flashlight ahead. What should have been a small closet stretched longer than the building's footprint allowed. The narrow corridor leaned downward slightly, twisting perspective so each step felt heavier than the last. At the far end, a second door waited, paint peeling, metal numbers screwed into its upper panel read 1. The extra dash looked deliberate, carved deeper than the digits themselves. I hesitated. Behind me, the lobby clock ticked louder each second, hitting my nerves like nails. I gripped the knob. Cold. Too cold. The door creaked open into a cramped storage space lit by a single bulb swaying slightly. Inside sat an old food cart, rusted chrome, wheels frozen with dried sludge, black under the yellow light. Metal trays lined its top, covered with hotel cloches stamped Crosswind Motel courtesy bites. I peeled one open, half expecting rats or mold. Inside was something worse, a single slice of white bread with perfect edges. But it felt like cloth soaked in water. No smell, just a faint heat, as if it had been breathing moments ago. The label tag on the cart read, "Room 2." Another door sat behind the cart, identical to the first, leading deeper. The space was wrong geometry, shredded by whatever lived here. Corners bent inward like folded paper stretched too far. Every breath carried faint sea mist, though the place was miles inland. I turned to leave. The door I came through was gone, not invisible, gone, replaced by faded wallboard patterned with cheerful suns. My voice came out small. "Miss Hallow?" No answer. From the second door came the squeak of metal wheels turning. The cart moved slow, deliberate, its rust-caught wheels moaning through the silence. It stopped, a narrow envelope resting on a tray, stamped in red wax. Ledger copy. Inside were 3 folded forms, identical to guest check-ins, each printed for non-existent rooms. Room 1, 2, 3, none listed names. All had paid in silence in the bottom field. Timed entries at hours I'd never worked: 10 a.m., 2 p.m., 5 p.m. The static returned, not from the phone, but somewhere inside the corridor walls, faint, pulsing, like heartbeats through plaster. Words formed, tearing loose from the interference. "Deliver the tray before dawn. Put it back where it wants to be." I whispered. "Where does it want to be?" The shadows under the cart lengthened. With nowhere else to go, I pushed it ahead. The wheels shrieked once before sliding smoother on their own, as if guided. Liquid dripped from the bottom tray, clear at first, turning deep brown before touching the floor. The smell blended rot and salt until my eyes watered. At the end of the passage, a third door waited without a painted number, only engraved letters, "Return." My flashlight beam trembled. I pressed the handle. The lights behind me dimmed in sympathy. The new hallway beyond was too clean, sterile tiles reflecting white fluorescent glow. It led straight to another service cart, identical, holding 3 items: a ceramic cup filled with black fluid, a bundle of motel keys tied with red thread, and a folded note. Every night, clerk must make their offering, put 1 room to sleep. When I blinked, another sentence appeared below, handwriting leaking across the paper. Room 9 never sleeps. Panic rose sharp and sudden. I grabbed the thread of keys, 10 of them, none matching the brass tags outside. Numbers went both directions. 1, 2, 3, then negative. 1 through 4. The air shifted. Behind me, the corridor closed itself soundlessly, not like a door shutting, more like the hall exhaled me out. Ceiling lights flickered. The smell of coffee filled the space, masking the sea rot. I looked down. The ceramic cup steamed lightly on its own. The fluid wasn't coffee pitch black, thicker than syrup, bubbling once before cooling. I didn't touch it. Instead, I wrote on the note instinctively, "Who are you?" The ink bled outward, forming one word beneath it: reception. Somewhere nearby, lobby bells rang multiple chimes, layered, offbeat, echoes from different times. I turned, pushing the cart farther until light collapsed into shadow. Through darkness, a motel television glowed in the middle of the hall. Static flickered into the outline of my own desk. A figure stood at the counter, me older, thinner, drenched in something dark. It leaned close to the camera and whispered. I turned the volume knob, fingers shaking. The sound emerged clearly. "You're serving them now. You should have never accepted check-ins after midnight." Then the tape snapped. The screen died. The bulb above cracked with a dry sting. Darkness poured back in. I shoved the cart through the return door. Something on the other side resisted, heavy, almost alive, but rolled free after a breathless struggle. The door slammed instinctively. I stepped backward, hands trembling, until light reappeared, my own lobby lamp bleeding through cracks. Just enough glow to remind me I was near the desk. Dawn hadn't arrived. The clock still read 3:12 a.m., even after what felt like hours underground. The walls looked normal, windows intact, keys all back on hooks, including room 9. It gleamed faint red, as if it had never rusted. The intercom clicked alive with that strained hum. Miss Hallow's voice whispered softly, "Well done, Eli. You kept the offering safe." I swallowed. "What offering?" A pause stretched too long. "The room service," she said. "The guests must eat between worlds." The line went dead. When I turned to the monitors, Channel 9 showed a slow pan of the hallway I'd left underground. Every tray from the carts was now occupied 12 plates, each showing a perfect slice of bread, rising and falling softly, like lungs. I thought I'd dreamed the part about Miss Hallow's voice. Maybe I'd fallen asleep at the desk, exhausted from the hallucination of the service corridor and breathing bread. But the smell of sea rot still hung faintly in the air, impossible to dismiss. The Crosswind Motel didn't smell like bleach or coffee anymore. It smelled like the ocean at low tide. I kept staring at the clock, 3:14 a.m. It hadn't moved for what felt like 15 minutes, though the second hand twitched every so often like a dying insect. My focus shifted to the monitor wall. The security feeds glowed pale and cold, split into 4 channels. Only now, a 5th square had appeared, unlabeled, flickering faint gray. I leaned forward and adjusted the knob beneath the screen. The new feed stabilized to show myself, sitting at the desk. Not just now in perfect sync. The figure on screen moved when I did, only a half-second delay, like an echo with eyes. I raised my right hand slowly. The figure raised its left, mirrored. Then a ripple tore across the image. The mirrored version kept its hand raised as mine lowered, staring with that dead calm of a recording that doesn't realize it's out of sequence. I could hear the faint hum of the old VCR system powering up behind the wall. We'd switched to digital years ago, but Crosswind's setup was older hybrid analog, built sometime in the 80s, according to Carl. Each camera fed into an ancient tape deck that supposedly looped every 12 minutes. 12 minutes. My stomach tightened. At the edge of the new feed, I noticed a small clock overlay. Time index 3 hours, 14 minutes, and 0 seconds. Loop 07. The longer I watched, the more wrong it felt inside my head, as if my thoughts had started syncing with the hum of old machinery. Faint voices began to overlay the feed audio, distant phone chatter, hallway creaks, the scrape of a metal cart I'd already left somewhere else. When I reached for the switch to kill the system, the monitor flashed white, and the other feeds joined in every screen, showing different versions of me at the desk. One cleaning the counter, one answering the phone, one whispering into the reflection of the lobby window, all happening simultaneously. I felt the room tilt, not physically, but perceptually, the world bending around the sound of rewinding tape. Then the intercom buzzed softly. A voice identical to mine spoke from the speakers. "It has to replay, Eli, or the guests forget how to stay." I backed away, watching as my own reflection in the monitor leaned closer to the camera. It mouthed words I couldn't hear, then reached out and knocked once on the inside of the screen. The image shuddered. The glass of the monitor bowed outward like soft plastic. I grabbed the ledger, a pointless defense, when static overtook everything. Moments later, color returned to the feed, showing an image that made my heart seize. Carl, sitting at the same desk, chin propped in one hand, staring off camera. His uniform looked older, same pattern of stains. I remembered the obituary I'd found last week, the one with his picture and date of death matching the night he quit. Now here he was, alive only on cheap CRT glow. The tape counter read, Loop 03. "Carl?" I whispered. He blinked in the footage. Eyelids fluttered like he heard me through time. Then he looked straight at the lens. He lifted a note into view, written big so I could read it through static. "Unplug the clock." I blinked, gripping the counter hard enough that dust rose. When I looked back, Carl was gone, replaced by me. Only this version looked sleep-deprived to the point of ruin. Pale skin, eyes ringed black, posture twisted forward in unnatural imitation of living behavior. The time index now read 3 hours, 22 minutes, and 9 seconds. Loop 08. Below the number, new text appeared every few seconds. Footage replayed by maintenance program. Do not intervene. A low buzzing grew louder, transforming into a high-pitched tone that made my teeth vibrate. The walls themselves seemed to breathe with it. Somewhere inside that electronic whine, another voice whispered, not mechanical this time, but organic, deep with salt and wind. It records what we forget to remember. I couldn't stand it anymore. I unplugged every screen. Sparks spit from one outlet, but it didn't stop the images. Remaining monitors stayed on, showing newer angles. The hallway from above, the vending machine corner, the doorway of room 9 slowly opening. Fog spilled from within, drifting backward through the lens like smoke from reversed film. Ledger pages flipped on their own, edges fluttering fast. Ink spread across the paper, timestamps filling in as though typed by invisible fingers. 3:26 a.m. clerk accepted loop renewal. 3:26 a.m. clerk denied loop renewal. 3:26 a.m. clerk uncertain. 3 contradictory entries, all written at once. "Stop," I whispered. "Please stop." None of it listened. The exit door clicked open half an inch. Cold air leaked through, smelling of static, that impossible, scentless ozone you notice just before lightning strikes. Through the gap, I heard overlapping versions of my own voice arguing. Pieces of sentences layered together, fracturing. "You're loop 3. No, I'm loop 7. It's our shift. Don't let her rewrite." It was me. Dozens of me. The leftover recordings of every night. I slammed the door shut and jammed a stool in front of it. When I turned again, the final active monitor shifted to camera 9. No longer dark. It showed a long view of the lobby where I stood, but with one subtle difference. Sitting at the desk was a recording of me staring at the screen, holding the exact same expression I wore now. In the corner of that screen, a date flickered. October 10th, 2023, previous shift. The recording me reached into the ledger, tore out a page, and burned it over a lighter flame. Smoke leaked through the monitor as if the act still happened in this space. I stumbled backward, slapping at embers that weren't real. Fire alarms didn't go off. Instead, the speakers hissed with Miss Hallow's monotone. Containment error. Repeating segment. The alarms restarting were replaced by a faint song, easy listening elevator music, warped and playing backward. In its rhythm, something clicked in my mind. Every 12 minutes, the cameras didn't just loop, they reset time itself inside the motel, layering each clerk's night over the next until the building became a reel of existence, replaying forever. I looked up again. The time index reset to 3 hours, 14 minutes, and 0 seconds. Loop 09. The reflected version of me smiled faintly. "Stay still for the next recording," it mouthed. The monitors cut to black all at once. The darkness that followed wasn't absence. It was film-grained, thick, tangible, quivering. From inside that blackness, one faint blue word scrolled upward like closing credits. Next clerk, Eli Harmon, active. The lights surged back on with daylight brightness, revealing new printed rule sheets stapled across every wall, all reading. Follow the updated checklist. Prevent the hallway clock from striking 4. The metal minute hand on the lobby clock trembled toward it. The clock's minute hand trembled against the number 4, vibrating hard enough to hum through the wall. The note stapled below it, "Prevent the hallway clock from striking 4, pulsed faintly, as if written in light instead of ink. I didn't know what would happen if it struck, but after everything I'd seen these past nights, I believed anything could happen. The motel was different now. The carpet patterns rippled when I looked too long. The rows of keys on the pegboard clicked, not rattling from wind, but as if each one was rotating in invisible locks somewhere deeper inside the building. I called out once, stupidly, almost to check if I was still human. "Miss Hallow?" My voice didn't echo. It came back later, delayed, as though the walls were considering how to imitate me before releasing their own answer. 3:55 a.m. The security monitors flickered back to life of their own accord. Every camera fed the same image now. The front desk viewed from a distance, empty. Not me, not the hallways. Just still air, and the hand of the clock crawling closer to 4. A faint tone drifted through the speakers. At first I thought it was static again. Then it resolved into something mechanical, rhythmic, the sound of gears turning underwater. The floor trembled in time. The motel's bones were moving. All 12 room doors clicked open in unison. I could see them through the lobby window, each door standing ajar at an identical angle, red numbers glinting like wet eyes. This was wrong timing, impossible timing. Every guest should have been asleep or gone. Yet light spilled softly from the rooms, different colors each time. Blue, red, yellow, violet, bleeding together until the parking lot looked submerged. Then came the voices, not through the phone or intercom this time, but drifting down the hall in perfect sync. "Breakfast, service, begins." Each word fell from an unseen mouth with the weight of ritual. 3:58 a.m. I moved toward the hallway clock, that cursed brass-faced thing Miss Hallow insisted be wound nightly. Its glass pane distorted like a fisheye lens, and behind it I could swear the reflection showed 12 identical clocks stacked in a tunnel of mirrors, all ticking a breath out of phase. I reached up, meaning to stop the hand. The moment my fingers brushed the cool brass rim, static raced down my arm hard enough to spark. Everything in the room froze. The second hand stopped mid-tick. The lights steadied. But the rest of the motel didn't pause with it. Outside, in the fog, those open doors now exhaled low, thunderous wind. When movement restarted, the lobby lights burst bright white, blinding. Then darkness. When vision returned, I wasn't standing where I'd been. The counter was behind me now. The hallway stretched longer than possible, doors receding forever. At its far end, Miss Hallow waited, hair unmoving though the wind around her howled. She gestured once with an elegant, brittle hand. "You were supposed to let it strike, Eli." "Why?" My voice cracked in the echoing corridor. "What happens if I don't?" Her eyes shimmered with something that wasn't color. "The crosswind collects its balance. It erases one keeper. Tonight, you were the offering." The floor groaned. Each doorframe bent slightly inward, angles curling toward us like ribs pulled shut. Miss Hallow began to dissolve. Not disappear, dissolve. Edges separating into pale dust drawn toward the ceiling vents. She neither screamed nor struggled, only smiled, murmuring, "It prefers new caretakers now." Pieces of her swept upward and vanished through the tiles. The hallway lights popped, one after another, chasing darkness forward like a fuse. 3:59 a.m. I ran for the desk. The rule sheets on the wall had changed again, letters rearranging themselves faster than I could read. Each sentence started coherent and ended meaningless. "Keep all guests inside. Do not breathe during reset. When the crosswind turns its eye, hand over the name you borrowed." The pen in the ledger lifted by itself and hovered over the open page. Ink bled through in looping, mechanical strokes. Name to erase. My hands trembled too much to resist. Against instinct, I wrote. Not mine, but Miss Hallow's. The pen dug into paper until the nib snapped. The ledger slammed shut so hard it shook the counter. Then silence. 4 a.m. The clock struck. Once. Except it didn't sound like metal. It rang like thunder filtered through water. A resonance shaking the very air from my lungs. Every door slammed shut in the same instant. The fog outside reversed direction, rushing inward through vents and gaps around the window panes, filling the lobby with swirling mist. Light fractured through it in broken prisms. At the counter, the monitors surged alive one by one, each displaying a new occupant behind the desk, a line of clerks stretching into eternity. Carl, versions of me, faceless shadows wearing my name badge. They spoke together, one long ribbon of voices blending into storm wind. The rules have changed. The clock's face cracked down the middle. Its hands fell inward and kept spinning freely, detached from time. When the fog settled, I wasn't in the lobby anymore. I stood inside one of the rooms, though room barely described it. The walls stretched upward like warped canvas, wallpaper still patterned in those cheerful suns, except now each smiling face peeled and blinked. The bedspread rippled as if breathing beneath fabric. From the corner, a familiar object gleamed. A brass key marked 9. It pulsed faintly with warmth. I didn't touch it. I only watched as it slid on its own toward the door and slipped through the crack underneath. The single remaining rule sheet on the bedside table read, "Do not attempt checkout until management contacts you. You are management." Outside the warped door, guests began whispering my name in perfect unison. The neon sign flickered red through the curtains, spelling something different for the first time. Crosswind 9 in, while the broken clock somewhere deep in the walls kept trying to strike again. I woke up to daylight, or something faking it. Pale light bled through the curtains of room 9, filtered through air too heavy to belong to morning. The first thing I noticed was silence. Not true silence. Machines still hummed somewhere, motors turning. But no wind, no static, no whispers. Just the faint pulse of electricity coursing through the walls like blood. The second thing I noticed was the ledger on the nightstand. Same cracked leather cover, same faint ocean smell. Its pages lay open to a fresh entry. Eli Harmon, night clerk, paid in silence. Below it, Miss Hallow checked out, Checked out. The phrase hardly felt like relief. I stood, weak, legs half numb. The carpet was damp beneath my bare feet, and when I looked closer, I realized it wasn't water. It was ink seeping upward from under the floor, thin black veins stretching across each thread like printed words buried in the fibers. When I stepped toward the mirror, I understood. The reflection didn't copy me immediately. It delayed half a second, the same lag the security feed once showed. My badge hung off my shirt collar crooked, but the reflection's badge was perfect, clean. Reading manager. I laughed, a dry, exhausted sound. No, not again. But laughter didn't stop the transformation. Each mirror in the room began to blink faint light, not silver, not glass, but the bluish glow of monitor screens. Every reflection turned digital, each showing me performing duties that weren't happening now. Answering phones, cleaning, locking doors, writing ledgers. "Checkout is complete," said a calm female voice from behind me. I turned. Miss Hallow stood by the doorway, translucent, expression unreadable. "You kept the cycle intact," she continued. "The crosswinds always need a keeper. I'm not staying." Her head tilted, almost pitying. We all said that. For one heartbeat, her body sharpened. Less ghost, more film over flesh, and the color drained through her eyes like water down glass. When she faded again, she left behind a clipboard on the bedside table. Across its surface, neat handwriting filled an inventory list. Keys accounted, room sealed, record complete. The final line stung most. Staff promotion approved. Eli Harmon appointed manager. Indefinite tenure. My stomach dropped. "Indefinite," I said aloud, "means permanent, doesn't it?" Across the hall, the doors shifted slightly open, rust hinges groaning. I felt wind, the kind born of movement, not weather, spill from them in rhythm. One by one, pale outlines of guests formed on the threshold. They weren't solid. They shimmered with the same interference that haunted the cameras. Part reflection, part person. The nearest one, a trucker with waxen skin, lifted his chin just enough to speak through static. "Manager." The rest followed, murmuring, "Manager, manager," until it became a pulse, matching my own heartbeat. I backed into the room. "No, I'm not your manager." They didn't stop. The air thickened, pulling my vision into tunneling. Dim red from the neon sign outside strobed through the curtain. Crosswind 9 in the new name, the new branding for whatever loop was rebuilding itself. "Miss Hallow," I whispered, "you told me to follow rules. What do I do now?" Her voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "You write new ones." The ledger's pages began to fill again on their own. Slow, mechanical penwork that spelled phrases without my control. Rule 1, clock never strikes 4. Rule 2, windows remain hours. Rule 3, guests check in but do not leave unremembered. Rule 4, when the manager hears knocking, answer gently. My hands trembled over the paper, each word carved deeper until it looked engraved in bone instead of ink. I walked outside the room as dawn, or illusion of it, continued to grow. The hallway stretched normal length again. 12 doors, red paint. The air still smelled of salt. At the front desk, everything looked freshly cleaned. Coffee pot rinsed, counters polished, brochure rack refilled. A perfect scene, as if the previous night hadn't happened at all. The monitors blinked alive once more, showing a familiar image. Myself sitting down at the counter, checking the register, flipping the ledger open. But this time, it wasn't playback. It was live. Outside, a car rolled into the lot and stopped under the Crosswind sign. The headlights cut through mist, and a young man stepped out, holding a duffel bag, expression tired, hopeful. He looked familiar, too familiar. The lobby door creaked open behind me. "Excuse me," he said. "You hiring for the night shift?" My throat locked around words that refused to leave. I saw movement on the monitor, the prior keeper, me, watching myself answer. Some unseen instinct pulled my hand forward to the counter. reaching under the phone cradle for the keyring. 12 of them hung in perfect order, brass tags shining under yellow light. I found myself lifting one, marked Room 9. The key felt warm, alive. "Sure," I heard myself answer, though the voice didn't sound entirely human anymore. "It's simple work, just follow the rules." He smiled, relieved, unaware. In the camera feed, time index 11 p.m., though the voice didn't sound entirely shining under yellow light. I found myself lifting one, marked Room 9. The key felt warm, alive. "Sure," I heard myself answer, though the voice didn't sound entirely human anymore. "It's simple work, just follow the rules." He smiled, relieved, unaware. In the camera feed, time index 11 p.m. blinked and reset to loop 01. Wind swept through the vents, carrying soft whispers that faded before I could interpret them. Maybe words, maybe just the sound of another shift beginning. The neon sign outside flickered once, strobed twice, then settled to its permanent glow. Crosswind Motel open all night,